Part 3. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 22. When Subai left the dormitory and walked out of the dormitory building, he happened to find Chu Zhao, who had put Lu He in the ambulance and returned. When Chu Zhao saw Subai, he immediately ran over and pulled Subai to a corner on the side of the flower garden. "Dude, did you take away my pistol?" Subai took out the gun and handed it to Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao immediately carefully took out the magazine of the gun and checked the number of bullets before putting the gun back. "I said, buddy, aren't you no longer satisfied with killing people with a knife? You have to follow the example of those people in the United States and use guns to kill people, right? You can't use my gun in that case." Subai shook his head. "No, I'm fine, really." Chu Zhao looked at his friend in disbelief, then reached out and put his hand on Subai's shoulder. "Brother, although I don't like this police uniform very much, but I am still a policeman after all. Those people we killed before in our club were not good people. We can comfort ourselves in our hearts, which is doing justice to God, but there is a bottom line, let's not touch it, okay? Don't kill innocent people indiscriminately, okay?" Subai took a deep breath, nodded, and then smiled. "I understand this point of propriety. By the way, the buddy in your dormitory had a heart attack. I checked him out when I sent him to the ambulance. He was dead." Chu Zhao looked at Subai at this time and said, "Let's take a break from school. He died in a dormitory. 2 roommates, even though you are also a psychopath, you are probably still in trouble." Subai was not dissatisfied with Chu Zhao directly calling him mentally ill. He slowly took Chu Zhao's hand away from his shoulder. "My family will help me deal with the suspension of school, but I don't want to go home just yet. A few people in our circle also know about your family's affairs. If it doesn't work out, you can live with me. Or, isn't sooner going to the British Embassy? You can go directly to the UK. A change of environment might be helpful. Your mental state has improved. Let's see, maybe it will be like this. But if you go to England with Sunur, Gufan will probably go berserk." The 2 men walked while talking about the gossip in the circle. In the end, Chu Zhao patted Subai on the shoulder. He still needed to continue the investigation mission, so he could not stay with Subai for too long. Subai pursed his lips a few times and looked at Chu Zhao's leaving figure. He seemed to have told Chu Zhao that the murderer in this case was dead, killed by him, and carried into the ambulance by him. However, when the words came to my lips, I didn't know how to say them out. Needless to say, no one will believe it because there is no evidence. Gong Zihai appeared behind Subai again. "We listeners are actually similar to those with schizophrenia. What we ourselves can touch and see, others cannot see. Therefore, we are lonely. We belong to the group of people who have been completely exiled from this world. We seem to be the same as before, but around us, there is an invisible cage that is restraining us. It is very icy, very cold, biting, and despairing." "Why don't you leave?" Subai asked, "reciting poetry here in the middle of the night, why are you so crazy?" "Because there is one thing I haven't figured out yet." Gong Zihai's eyes wandered over Subai. "I can feel that there are some changes in your aura. Don't tell me what you exchanged for." "Why should I tell you? Hey, are you still keeping secrets from me?" Gong Zihai smiled and shook his head, then took out his mobile phone. Those who have not experienced the story 3 times, even if they are lucky enough to get the story points, cannot redeem them. However, there are always some exceptions, because sometimes some special things will appear in the WeChat store of Terror Broadcast's public WeChat account. We'll ignore those rules, but most of those things are garbage, considered to be eliminated from the micro stores, and the price-performance ratio is really poor. Gong Zihai took out his mobile phone, clicked on the WeChat official account, and then clicked on the Wadian. Then, a meaningful smile appeared on his face, and he grabbed Subai's arm, scratched it with his nails, and touched Subai's arm. A shallow cut was made on Bai's arm, and blood flowed out immediately, but the wound was not very big. And very quickly, the wound healed immediately. At the same time, the scar began to disappear at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the skin returned to its original state. Did you really redeem the broken vampire? Subai broke away from Mr. Hai's hand and said nothing, but the facts said everything. After you complete another experience mission, you can redeem those bloodlines or abilities that can be continuously redeemed and upgraded. There is no use in redeeming bloodlines that cannot continue to rely on story points to upgrade. The first thing I have to do is to survive the third experience mission in the future, Subai said seriously. Mr. Hai shrugged speechlessly. Do you really think the experience mission is difficult? In fact, your first experience mission is actually very simple, isn't it? It's far less difficult than this experience mission, right? Subai thought of the scene in his first mission, when the two old couples captured the female white-collar worker and then died together with the female white-collar worker. Indeed, during the first mission, he could only be regarded as a bystander at most. For those who have experienced it, it is indeed not very difficult. The real reason why your second experience mission makes you feel so miserable is that you happen to be a part of this early story thread. You have a close relationship with the deceased and the murderer. But the chance of this happening is very small, and your next experience mission may simply be like this one. Therefore, the third experience mission is really not too difficult for you. At most, you can bring some quick acting jokes and pills to prevent yourself from being scared to death. But you've screwed yourself by hurriedly converting the hard-earned story points into this scumbag with no potential or subsequent upgrade capabilities. Listening to Gong Zihai's words, Subai didn't feel much regret in his heart. Since it was his own choice, there was no regrets, and he couldn't return it. Forget it, it doesn't matter to me. The mountains and rivers will change. See you again in the future. I hope you can become stronger next time and stop being used as a human shield by me. Gong Zihai brought his mouth closer, as if he wanted to kiss Subai before leaving. Subai took a step back and pointed at Gong Zihai. It's not me. You've been cut into pieces, so that's what you're all about. Okay, I just like your character and temper. Gong Zihai smiled condescendingly, then turned around and left. This time, he really planned to leave. After walking out of the school gate, Gong Zihai roared with an angry face, I'm so angry, so angry. A newcomer dares to talk to me so arrogantly, and dares to be so arrogant in front of me. I'm not a piece of shit. Use the shield to withstand the attack, so you have time to think of a solution, but, I'm not a human shield. Subai did not go back to the dormitory that night. Instead, he went outside the campus, found an express hotel, took a shower, and then lay on the bed. When he woke up, it was already noon the next day. These days, I am indeed too tired. At this time, Subai remembered that his phone was not charged. He plugged it in and turned it on while charging. When he went to the bathroom to wash up, the call came. Subai came out to answer the phone with a toothbrush in his mouth. A very majestic voice came from the other end of the phone. Subai. Yes, second uncle. Subai responded. Let's take a break from school first. After the second the person on the other end hung up the phone. Outsiders only see the glamorous background of Subai's family, but they don't know the embarrassing position of a child whose parents died young. Although he does not have the experience and drama of being bullied by his peers in the family, in short, for Subai, there are still some barriers in that family, and not many relatives are close to him. Fortunately, Subai's parents left Subai a very rich inheritance, so Subai didn't have to worry about anything in life. For example, with my second uncle, Subai, we basically didn't contact him when nothing happened. When we did contact him, we would always talk in short lengths. Back in the bathroom, Subai continued to brush his teeth. Subai suddenly felt a little cold on his back. Could it be that the air conditioner was too much? Subai raised his head and looked at the mirror on the sink in front of him. On my left shoulder. With a human face. A woman's face. Subai suddenly recalled that in the story world, he encountered a ghost under the school dormitory. Since she exists in the story world, she must also exist in reality. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Disyao. Chapter 23. Last time, in the story, Subai relied on his dagger to directly beat the female ghost away. Because his dagger had killed many people, it was considered a murder weapon, similar to a butcher's knife. But this time, his dagger was not with him. The female ghost's chin was close to Subai's shoulder. Subai could clearly feel the vague weight. It was very light, but it was indeed there. This was a very strange feeling, as if it was something about his own body. There have been conflicts in the perception of one thing by the senses, but at least one thing can be confirmed, that is, she really exists and is beside him. At the same time, the female ghost's face began to slowly move sideways, and gradually came together with Subai's cheek. It looked very ambiguous, like an intimate gesture between a couple or lovers, but it was probably not a normal man. I really like this scene, especially this object. Subai calmly took a sip of water, rinsed his mouth, spit it out, then turned around and left the bathroom. He had seen a few big scenes and was used to it, or he was numb, and he seemed to be quite at ease. Feel. Sitting on the bed, Subai took out 2 tissues and wiped his face. The TV was right in front of Subai. Subai saw that the female ghost came behind him and sat down against his back. Subai was speechless. Yes. Speechless. Because he has experienced more, Subai now feels that he has developed psychological immunity to this kind of ghost. Moreover, this female ghost was scared away by the fierce energy on her dagger before in the story. Those in the story world danger factors and supernatural powers will be amplified, as you can see by referring to the paper man. Therefore, the female ghost is actually weaker in reality. That being the case, there really isn't much to be afraid of. What is being broadcast on the TV is a local channel program. The news headline is that a female man takes the initiative to confess to a boy. The pretty girl in the picture is holding flowers and kneeling down to a boy. Wang Wei, I wish you a happy birthday. I want to give you myself as a birthday gift. Of course, Subai's focus was not on the TV. Why are you following me? Subai asked. The female ghost was stunned for a moment, with a hint of bewilderment on her face, but then she showed a look of surprise, even surprise. The female ghost pointed at a glass of water in front of Subai. Subai understood and pushed the glass over, spilling the water. The water stains on the table began to move, and gradually, crooked words appeared. Sure enough, you can see me. Subai took out another bottle of mineral water, opened the cap, and took a sip. Can we stop talking nonsense? Good. What do you want to do by following me? Subai asked. Yang, I need it. My yang qi, Subai pointed at himself, if you suck it away, will I become impotent? No, I don't want that much. Then what's in it for me? If you give up, you will get something. Subai really doesn't mind making some deals with ghosts now, as long as he can get enough benefits for himself. I don't know what I can do to help you, the female ghost replied. Then there is no benefit to me, Subai smiled, then this is not an agreement. If you could directly harvest my yang qi regardless of my objections, you wouldn't have talked nonsense with me for so long, right? Yes. Actually, you can find someone else to smoke it. That would be good for you and me. I'm not Zhang Tianji, so I won't care. You are different from others. The taste of your blood and your body are different. That's really my honor. Sudbai's face was a little serious at this time. Although I don't know how to fight ghosts, I think if I spend a little more money to go to some temples or Taoist temples, I can find some truly Taoist practitioners. A monk or a Taoist priest can still take you in, right? Okay. The female ghost was so temperless, so honest, so straightforward, and so resolute that it made Sudbai feel like he had punched cotton with his fist. You can think about it again. I am a very unprincipled person. I need enough benefits so that you can absorb part of my yang energy. Sudbai repeated his conditions. The female ghost was sitting on the bed, seemingly thinking. Sudbai took out his mobile phone, entered his school's Taiba, and then started searching for keywords in the Taiba. In fact, it is normal for 1 or 2 students to die every year in schools. Putting aside the things that attract people's attention and excitement, such as jumping off a building, suicide, and homicide, in fact, there are also many people who die due to illness or other natural causes. After all, the school has such a large population base. Soon, Sudbai found the post he was interested in through his keyword search in the school post bar. After clicking on it, there was a photo of a very young female student. This was a missing person post. The girl in the photo looks very delicate, with the aura of a campus goddess. The post was sent by a classmate in her dormitory, saying that she had been missing for a month and that neither her teachers nor her parents could find her. Sudbai looked at the time of posting and found that it was 3 years ago. 3 years. It seems that this girl should not have disappeared and turned into a ghost. She should be dead. Moreover, it can be seen from the fact that her ghost is still wandering in the school. The girl might have had an accident. Died in school. Sudbai felt a little sorry for Chu Zhao. Fortunately, Sudbai himself was not an enthusiastic citizen who was dedicated to doing good, so he was too lazy to call Chu Zhao to report the case, and he had no reason to explain it. Could it be that I saw the ghost of the missing female student in a hotel near the school, so I reported the case? Did the female student die in the school or near the school? If Chu Zhao heard himself say this, he would probably jump up and yell at himself. He didn't sleep last night. Will he continue to stay up late tonight? Sudbai really couldn't compliment Chu Zhao's level of dedication and moral standards as a people's policeman, but fortunately, it seems that this female ghost is not like what is written in the play. She can see him when she sees him. People who are crying will come over to seek revenge, seek justice, and just want to absorb their own yang energy. You haven't thought about it yet, Sudbai urged. He lit a cigarette without smoking it. He just held it on his finger and shook it. The female ghost was urged by Sudbai, and as if she suddenly thought of something, a few words were immediately drawn on the water on the table. Paper figures, things, hidden. Seeing these words, Sudbai's eyes immediately narrowed. Gong Zihe had searched before, but could not find anything left by Lu He. He and others thought that Lu He was not really a metaphysical person, but only because of his natural ability to communicate with paper people and control them to do things. However, depending on what this female ghost means. Lu He. In this school. Something was left behind. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 24. The next day, there were many fewer police cars in the school, but there were many more plainclothes policemen. It could be seen that the case against Chen Chu and his girlfriend had been transferred to the underground investigation link, and they were no longer investigated with great fanfare. And the students who were called to participate in the search for the body that night were also summoned by the school leaders and issued a gag order. Anyone who dared to make irresponsible remarks outside or deliberately spread any news on the internet will be disqualified from graduation once verified. The superiors have also clamped down and blocked news in this area. In short, now, There is no news about this kind of thing on the internet. In fact, netizens can easily solve and cope with it. As long as it cools down for a period of time, their attention will I am attracted by new things and dislike the old very much. Subai didn't want to contact Chu Zhao. He was holding an umbrella in his hand. Although the sun was shining brightly now, he didn't hold an umbrella to protect himself from the sun. However, it seemed to be such a coincidence that Chu Zhao, who had been busy until the morning and slept on the floor in the lecture theater, was walking out with a lunchbox at this time, saw Subai, and waved. Subai sighed and had no choice but to walk over. Come back to get something from the dormitory. Subai nodded. Have you figured out where to go? Let's go back to Chengdu first. My parents have a house there. I'll go live there for a while, just to relax. Chu Zhao nodded, that's fine, but our club is not in operation now. You, Tusk, if you really can't bear it anymore, tell me, I can take a leave to go to Chengdu to find you, at least, help you planning, do you understand? You can eat your food, I'm not that bad. Okay, I'll see you later, buddy. Subai took an umbrella and walked towards the dormitory area. However, he did not walk into the dormitory building. Instead, he stopped in front of a semi-abandoned three-story building behind the dormitory building. This three-story building was used as a college student activity room in the past few years, but now with the use of the new campus, many things in the old campus are no longer used, such as this building, so it had to be abandoned. Now the focus of the school has been transferred to the new campus. The old campus may no longer house students and teach classes in 2 years. Subai walked in. The door was unlocked, because no one came usually, and there was nothing worth stealing inside. The dust inside was very heavy, so Subai was in no hurry to continue inside after entering. Instead, he picked up the umbrella and said, "If you lie to me, I will let you know the consequences." The umbrella shook slightly, signaling that he understood. Subai never asked how the female ghost died in the first place. In fact, judging from the relationship, the female ghost should be regarded as Subai's senior, and she might only be 1 or 2 years older. Subai continued to walk inside. There were many tables, chairs, and some costumes inside. Subai moved all these things away first, and then found his way to the second floor. When he went up to the second floor, the surrounding light was already very dark. However, the power in this building has been cut off, and even if I want to turn on a light, I can't. However, Subai found some traces on the stairs. Someone had been here recently, and there were still footprints here. They were the footprints of a man. The footprints were still very clear and they were left recently. Was it really Lu He who had been here before? Subai pursed his lips and continued to walk up. The second floor seemed more empty. After Subai arrived, he first went to an office with a closed door. Fortunately, the door was not locked. He reached out and pulled it. The door became loose and was pulled open. Inside, all the desks and chairs were piled up, densely packed and stacked high. Subai bent down, took out his mobile phone, turned on the flashlight function, and illuminated the area. There were also traces of walking on the ground, which were very inconspicuous, but they were still discovered by the attentive Subai. Subai walked over and started to move forward slowly along the traces. Finally, he moved the chairs in front and put them aside. Then, he saw a black travel bag placed inside. Is this it? Subai took out the travel bag. It was not very heavy inside, but he could feel that there was something inside. However, Subai did not intend to open the bag here, but planned to go out before carrying the bag. However, just when Subai walked to the door of this office with his bag. Door. Suddenly it closed with a pop sound. Subai touched his nose and looked at the umbrella in his hand. Buzz. At this moment, a wooden thorn suddenly shot out from the pile of tables and chairs and pierced directly into Subai's lower abdomen. Grass. Subai covered his lower abdomen, knelt down, and dropped his black luggage bag beside him. Blood gurgled out. The umbrella broke free, flew out by itself, and landed on one side. Immediately afterwards, a black flame burned where the black luggage bag had been. The flame was very filthy, and seemed to be burning something filthy. It was very quickly, the tables and chairs in that area began to loosen slowly, and a hand reached out from inside. That is a white hand. It is also a very charming hand. That was also a man's hand. Subai watched helplessly as the hand kept changing positions in that position, as if one hand could perform a dance. Subai took a deep breath and staggered to his feet again, covering his chest with one hand and holding the ground with the other. However, at the next moment, another hand appeared from Subai's feet and directly grabbed Subai's ankle. Boom! Subai's whole body was overturned again. Immediately afterwards, the hand that was still dancing suddenly grabbed a wooden thorn beside him and quickly came to Subai's face. The second wooden thorn directly pierced Subai's chest. Chest position. Subai struggled a few times, but finally blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth and he lost his breath. Wow! Open the umbrella. The figure of the female ghost was revealed, and the female ghost looked very resentful. Seem. She was being forced to do something she was completely forced to do, and her expression looked very unbearable. The two hands, one holding Subai's ankle and the other holding a wooden thorn, now slowly moved back to the place where the black luggage bag had been placed. Then, he pulled his hands down together, feeling as if he was pulling his body out of the ground. Soon, a paper figure was slowly pulled out. It was a half black and half white paper figure. It looked haggard and seemed to have exhausted all its energy, but there was a vicious look on its face. Expression. This is a painted face, but it is very similar to Lu He. In other words, he is Lu He. The originally resentful paper man's face slowly turned sinister at this time, and that resentful smile seemed to be filled with determination. Gigi, Subai, you never thought that you would kill me, but I would have already turned myself into half, a paper man. Thank you for helping me make the final decision. The paper lover. So. I do. Become a paper man. A cold voice began to float in the office, and then Lu He, the paper man, began to move forward slowly. His moving speed was indeed very slow, and it could be seen that his current state was really very bad. His attack on Subai had already consumed all his energy. Fortunately, he succeeded and Subai was killed by him. Lu He came to the umbrella, then slowly folded himself up again, and finally curled up and got into the umbrella. Dead woman, take me out of here. If I hadn't found you, you would have continued to be imprisoned here until your soul was obliterated by time. The female ghost looked at Subai, who was lying motionless on the ground, looking very painful, but it seemed that she was really afraid of Lu He, so she had to reintegrate into the umbrella. The umbrella could not fly, but could glide on the ground. Door. At this time, it slowly opened again. This move seemed to have exhausted Lu He's last bit of strength. Take me out of here and go to the third floor. There are my brothers and sisters there. I'm going to find them. They have been waiting for me, for a long, long time. After saying this, Lu He seemed to have fallen asleep. The umbrella slowly lifted slightly from the ground. The female ghost seemed to have used all her strength, and the umbrella flew up tremblingly. Lu He said that there were his brothers and sisters on the third floor. Obviously, Lu He had made many arrangements here, but he had been hesitant before, not knowing whether he should completely turn into a paper man and integrate into his own life. In that paper man's family, he placed the rest of the paper men on the third floor, and the paper man he prepared for himself was placed alone on the second floor. This abandoned building has almost become Luhi's own paper figurine paradise. Yesterday, Subai shot him dead. Luhi was not really dead. Subai made the final decision for Luhi, because Luhi had no choice. However, just as the umbrella was about to fly out of the door, a hand from behind just grabbed the umbrella. The female ghost's figure appeared again. Looking behind him in astonishment. Snapped. In the other hand, he held a lighter. After a crisp sound, a cluster of flames appeared. The fire is dim. It reflects a face that seems to be smiling but not smiling. Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Disyao. Chapter 25. Subai. 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 Let me go. Don't want. Don't want. Subai just held the umbrella and hung it upside down. He put the flame of the lighter directly up to it and watched the flames devouring the umbrella. The black smoke exuding stench made Subai feel deeply intoxicated. A feeling of, in this world, how many things can be more satisfying than watching the enemy who just planned to kill you disintegrate into ashes in front of you. Luhi is now a paper man, a weak paper man, a severely damaged paper man, far from the kind of perverted paper man who is invulnerable to water and fire but is afraid of blood in the world of horror radio stories. Now, fire, for him, is the biggest nemesis. After the last scream disappeared, the umbrella was burned into an umbrella stand, and ashes were scattered all over the ground. Inside are Luhi's ashes and the paper burned to ashes. Stretching out his feet, he stepped on the umbrella stand a few more times. Then, Subai gritted his teeth and first pulled out the wooden thorns stuck in his lower abdomen. Then, he also pulled out the wooden thorns on his chest. Out. It hurt, of course it hurt. After all, there was no anesthesia, but Subai's cruelty to him now was indeed beyond people's imagination. Blood is flowing. Subai's face. Also very pale. After doing these things, Subai leaned against the wall and gasped for air. Tired, very tired. The physical changes brought about by this ruined vampire blood are indeed very limited. It is very different from Subai's previous imagination of vampires who could recover quickly after their bodies were smashed. Now, he only has 2 wooden thorns, and it seems that everything has been squeezed out. If he adds 2 more wooden thorns, he will be completely hopeless. Subai remembered that in those film and television literary works that he had seen before, vampires could be beaten to pieces and recover gracefully. They were completely immortal. Of course, his broken vampire blood could change his body. After the transformation has reached this point, I can no longer ask for more. After all, you get what you pay for. I am still just an experienced listener of horror broadcasts. However, this feeling of being completely dead, with no breath. Subai still felt a little uncomfortable. He was now like a living dead, a walking corpse. However, he knows his own body best. Subai feels very hungry and tired now. He needs to eat something to replenish his body, and then take good care of himself for a while. Then, he can still become a living person again. It can also regain the breathing and temperature of a living person. To put it simply, after accepting the fusion of broken vampire blood, Subai has an extra death state than others. However, this death state is also limited. To be more vivid, it is like adding more to the blood tank of a game character. After the blood tank is empty, as long as the blue bar is not empty at the same time, it is not considered a complete death. Of course, the use time of the blue bar is limited, and it must be replenished as soon as possible to replenish the health bar. Otherwise, keeping the blue bar status all the time will result in death. This is also the reason why Gong Zihai sneered at Subai's exchange, because it was really useless. If he wanted to kill Subai, it was nothing more than a few more cuts. Moreover, this thing could not be exchanged in the future. After upgrading, the ability to rely on terror broadcasts to continue redeeming enhancements is lost. Come here, support me. Subai waved to the female ghost. The female ghost floated to Subai's side and supported one of Subai's arms. The female ghost's strength was very light and could only be regarded as better than nothing. Your choice is very wise, Subai said to the female ghost with a smile. The female ghost didn't speak, and she didn't express anything with her fonts. She was just a little numb, but she was also a little lucky. If Subai was an ordinary human being, she would follow Luhi's instructions to seduce Subai here and use her. It was a ghost's charm method, or some other method. However, when she got close to Subai, she smelled a smell from Subai that did not belong to ordinary people. This smell made her know that Subai was special. Ghosts are also things to be afraid of. Any intelligent being has an instinct to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. The same goes for the female ghost. She is controlled by Luhi, rather than feeling grateful to Luhi. With the female ghost supporting him, Subai felt that he was much less stressed. He opened the black luggage bag. The things inside were very simple: a dark green ring and a wooden comb with a red line on the wooden comb. Associated with a little paper figure, which is obviously a girl. You are so powerful, how can you control a ghost like this? Subai looked at the female ghost beside him. The female ghost looked at the little paper man with a look of pleading. Subai smiled and said, "Don't worry, my promise is still true." Subai picked up the little paper figurine and tore it into pieces with his hands. The female ghost showed a look of pain at first, but soon, a look of relief appeared on her face. Her eyes looking at Subai became even more serious. Soft. In fact, if Subai had Luhi's ability, he really wouldn't mind using Luhi's method to control the female ghost under his control, but Subai didn't have that ability, so he might as well do a good deed and help. The female ghost was freed. No matter what, she did make a choice that was beneficial to her, and she was able to take precautions. In the end, she successfully burned Luhi into dregs. The ring was a bit weird. Subai didn't dare to wear it casually in his hand, especially now that he looked like he had been hungry for 2 days and hadn't slept in 2 days. In this state, it was really not suitable to take risks. Putting the ring in his pocket, Subai walked down the stairs with the help of the female ghost. On the 3rd floor, Luhi said before that there were paper people, and even a family of paper people. Subai didn't know if Luhi was dead, which meant that the paper people on the 3rd floor would always be just paper people. However, Subai had made up his mind that when he left school, even if he spent some money, he would have this building taken over. Don't worry about everything, just burn them all. It's better for the paper people to go to their proper destination. Why continue to force them to stay in the world of the world? When he was about to leave the building, the female ghost submerged herself into Subai's clothes because she was afraid of direct sunlight. Subai finally managed to regain some mobility, but his steps were a little shaky, but it still supported him staggering like this. When I got to the school gate, I stopped a tricycle and took me to the hotel entrance. I paid the tricycle owner a tip and asked the tricycle owner to take me to the hotel elevator and into the room. The tricycle owner was a very kind woman. She didn't have any other thoughts. She put Subai on the bed and left. Subai, who was lying on the bed, felt very sleepy and fell asleep directly on the bed. This sleep is a day and a night. As for waking up, he was woken up by hunger. Subai felt a spasm in his stomach. The pain was so painful that he broke out in a cold sweat. He got up immediately, pulled out the room card and left the hotel. He went to a ramen shop below and ordered 1 ramen and 1 beef. When the beef came, Subai directly stuffed it into his mouth with chopsticks. It seemed that he was so polite and devoured the food while eating, which scared the people around him. The people around him looked at him from time to time, but Subai didn't care about it. After finishing the beef, he ate a bowl of ramen. Subai felt that he was not full at all. No. Wrong. It felt like I hadn't eaten at all. The hunger and emptiness in his stomach did not diminish at all. Subai put down his chopsticks. He knew that his hunger could not be solved by eating food. What he needs now is blood. 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 Thanks to the impulsive consumers for their popularity, and to all those who voted for Long's rewards, Xiao Long here sincerely thanks everyone for their support. During the new book period, the editor requested that the book should not be explosive and could only maintain the rhythm of 2 updates a day. However, after it is put on the shelves, Long will return to his former explosive character of Kogora. Old readers should know the explosive strength of Long's coding. Finally, I would like to ask for another wave of support. On the list of new books by signed authors, we are ranked second, and the first is a fantasy god. The gap is not very big. Let's help him anally. Make an exception today, there will be a 3rd chapter to be released later. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiao Long. Chapter 26. After paying the bill, Subai looked a little staggering when he walked out of the ramen shop. He turned his head and looked at the glass door of the ramen shop. From the reflection of the glass door, he could see a hint of blood hidden in his pupils. This is bloodthirst, this is a desperate pursuit of blood. One's own hunger needs blood to replenish it. Previously, Chu Zhao was worried that Subai would become a murderer after going to Chengdu due to mental illness. However, Chu Zhao's worries seemed a bit unnecessary, or a bit off the mark. Because Subai now encountered an impulse more terrifying than the murderous mania. He needs blood, fresh blood. This is a heartbreaking need like excessive hunger. In ancient times, the most docile farmers who turned their backs to the earth and turned their backs to the sky would rise up during times of famine and become refugee rebels that swept over the country. This is enough to show that hunger is a terrible oppression for a person. In fact, in modern society, few people have truly experienced the feeling of hunger. Generally, it means not eating for a day because of delays in work, or to lose weight. When that kind of hunger has completely tortured your body, you will start to go crazy. When the earth impacts one's rational nerves, humans are actually not much different from beasts. Subai leaned against the wall and sat down. On the small road in front of him, there happened to be a mother holding the little girl's hand and walking past. Subai couldn't help but licked his lips. Looking at the little girl's pink legs under her skirt, her cute face, and the fragrance that belonged to a child, Subai shivered. He stood up. Instinctively, he wanted to follow the mother and daughter, but at the next moment, he took a deep breath, sat down again, and held his head in his hands. No. No. Cannot be like this. Absolutely not. Subai didn't know what he was insisting on, and his reason was actually getting weaker and weaker. After getting up, Subai walked back to the hotel, entered his room, and locked the door. Blood, blood. Subai curled up on the bed. He longed for blood, very much, but he didn't know who he could find to provide him with blood in a short time. His first thought was to get it from the hospital blood bank, but now even if he finds connections and uses underground channels, he can't get it. It cannot be obtained in a short while, but killing people. The image of the little girl appeared in Subai's mind again. He shook his head violently and gritted his teeth. No, no, not like that. At this time, Subai was like a drug addict, rolling around on the bed alone. He no longer looked as suave as before, crying and miserable. Finally, Subai's expression began to become more and more ferocious. He rushed into the bathroom, turned on the faucet and poured water on his face desperately, but it was no use. When he raised his head, he saw that his entire face was distorted. He stood up, and there were fangs exposed at the lower corners of his lips. Vampires, really, are no different from vampires themselves. At this time, Subai's hands fell from the edge of the mirror slumped. All right. Gave up resistance. As if he had decided to do something, Subai seemed to calm down, and the hunger in his body was suppressed because the hunger became an instinct. When he opened the door to the room, Subai lowered his head, but at this moment, someone came from the corridor. Subconsciously, Subai immediately closed the door to his room again. Go in, right here. You have to pay me first. Would I still lie to you? Don't you see what kind of car I drove today? Don't you see what kind of watch I'm wearing on my hand? Am I going to lie to you for this little money? As long as you are obedient and serve me comfortably, I can just cover you up, you know? If you make me unhappy, okay, let's not do it this time. You go back to your school. Brother, I came out to play, just to watch and have fun. If the interest is gone, it's still a waste of time. I'm sorry, Brother Zeng, I was wrong. That's good. I'm telling you, it's your luck to meet your brother Zeng. The door of the room next to Subai was opened, and the man and woman walked in together. At this time, Subai, who was separated by the door, showed a sinister smile. At this time, he still had some sense in his mind, because he was very calm now, but the personal feelings and miscellaneous moral concepts restrained him. Have all been thrown to Java. This is your own prey, this is your own blood bag. Subai said to himself in his heart. Subai did not choose to break in directly, because there were probes in the corridor. He chose to climb out from the window, and then went to the window next door to his. Fortunately, the other party did not close the window, but there was no such thing inside. The only voice that did that was a man who lowered his voice and started asking the girl for her bank card number and Alipay password. The woman was forced to answer. Then, the woman's mouth should have been sealed and she no longer made any sound. Subai's face showed a hint of amusement. He slowly opened the curtains and saw what was going on inside. The girl was probably locked in a separate bathroom in the hotel room. Her mouth was sealed, her hands and legs were tied with nylon ropes, and even her eyes were taped with black tape. As for Brother Zeng, he was sitting on the ground in a straight suit, holding a beer bottle in his hand and blowing directly on the bottle. It's a lot of money, more than 9,000. It seems that you can earn very quickly in this industry. As expected of a female college student, selling it out is expensive. You make much more than those women in street hair salons. Occasionally, you can also act in a movie. Act innocent, and even make a few sexy boys in school miss you, hee hee. When I transfer the money, film a set of sex for you, and then you, I will take less than 10,000 yuan from you. If you dare to call the police, I will have someone give you the money later. Put the photos you take online and in your school's forum, and send them to all the relatives in your address book, so that they know what kind of person you are, and let your parents know that they support you to go to school. What on earth are you studying for, hee hee? Brother Zeng was drinking wine while talking, looking very comfortable. Unexpectedly, a dark figure had secretly come down from the window and stood behind the curtain. Subai booked a double bedroom, and in order to coax the female college student who came out to work as a prostitute, Brother Zeng not only rented a good car and rented a suit, but he couldn't get a substandard room, so he gave Subai a hiding place here. The space is indeed very large. After drinking a bottle of beer, Brother Zeng became a little excited. He got up and touched his hair with one hand and pulled his zipper with the other. Come on, give me a mouth first. If you do a good job, release that little juice of me as soon as possible so that we can get together and relax quickly. If you don't obey, hee hee, there is sulfuric acid here, it will destroy you directly, look out. Brother Zeng opened the bathroom door, and just as he was about to walk in, a hand silently stretched out from behind and pinched his neck, and then his whole body was knocked to the ground. Immediately afterwards, a punch came and hit his face directly. Brother Zeng was stunned. But the next moment, he immediately woke up because he felt a sudden sharp pain in his neck. Something stabbed into his neck, and it was still sucking blood from his body crazily. Blood. Living blood. Fresh blood. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Disyao. Chapter 27. Brother Zeng wanted to push the person on top of him away, but found that the other person was surprisingly strong and pressed tightly against him. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the blood in his body was flowing back crazily from the wound on his neck to his body. In each other's mouth. It's a hair-raising experience. Brother Zeng opened his mouth and wanted to scream, but because his neck was bitten so hard, he couldn't make a sound at all. Despair began to spread in Brother Zeng's heart. Faced with this approaching situation, he was completely defenseless, and now, he was even more helpless. In the end, Brother Zeng clearly felt that his heart seemed to have slowed down, and he no longer had the strength to struggle and push. Brother Zeng began to roll his eyes and open his mouth. Ah, ah. Ruiao's voice came out intermittently from Brother Zeng's mouth. In the end, even this sound was gone. Brother Zeng's body began to wither and his skin gradually turned into that of an old man in his 70s or 80s. Wrinkled. Subai was hungry, really hungry. When a person is hungry to an extreme, everything will no longer appear. Morality, reason, etc., will all go to hell. Call. Subai let out a cry of satisfaction, then raised his head and looked at the man in front of him who had almost been turned into a half-mummy corpse by one breath. This is the first time he has sucked blood, the first time he has sucked the blood of a living person. Subai knew that he was like opening Pandora's box. This feeling of sucking fresh human blood, this feeling of feeling the struggle and despair of the person he was sucking, made Subai intoxicated, made him sink, and made him completely unable to extricate himself. Close your eyes and feel the feeling of satisfaction that comes after the hunger disappears. It seems that all the cells in your body start to cheer. This feeling is simply wonderful. The blood in his eyes began to slowly fade away. Subai supported the ground with one hand and his forehead with the other, and slowly stood up. Taking a deep breath, the dead body in front of him did not arouse the slightest fear or panic in him. Unconsciously, Subai's mentality had been completely separated from his original life trajectory. Death, ghosts, and other horrific things that ordinary people rarely come into contact with can no longer arouse Subai's nerves. I walked to the bathroom and opened the glass door of the bathroom. The bound, blindfolded, and gagged female college student shivered instinctively. Although she couldn't see outside, she instinctively felt a sense of fear. She heard the desperate sound before death that Brother Zeng made before. She didn't know what happened, but she knew that something terrible must have happened, and she might be the next one. Subai looked at his face in the bathroom mirror, grinned, and found that his teeth were bloodshot. He turned on the faucet, and Subai began to wipe the corners of his mouth with water, and finally rinsed his mouth. After taking care of himself, Subai stood in front of the faucet and looked at the traces left by himself on the ground and here. He knew that the police could easily extract his DNA and many details and clues here. In this way, even if Chu Zhao is willing to help him, it will be difficult for him to escape the relationship. If his family comes forward in the end, even if his family pinches their noses and settles the matter because he is a child of the Su family, but he is already. If you are a bit of a grandma and don't care for your uncle, you will be completely reduced to the broom star and cesspit of the family. Subai rubbed his chin with his palm. He didn't like this feeling. He didn't like it very much. However, how should he solve his current situation? First of all, how should we deal with this female college student? Turning around, I looked at this female college student. She looked petite and delicate. She put on makeup and smelled good. She had the money to sell her. Kill her? She is not a virtuous person anyway. But Subai still shook his head. Subai was not a moral freak. He only relied on his own body to sell money. Subai didn't feel that it was despicable or unbearable. This couldn't give him a reasonable excuse. She died, and Subai suddenly felt that his thinking had begun to go a little eccentric, a bit extreme, and the way to solve the problem, the first thing he thought of was killing. This is not a normal thinking mode. If Subai wants to continue living in this society instead of hiding in a smelly ditch and being a mouse that cannot see the light, his own thinking mode will also be different under his normal circumstances. Must get back on track at the same time. Moreover, the most important thing is that Subai is full now. Once a person is full, he will feel disgusted with the food in front of him. Subai looked around and was torn between burning the entire room or disposing of the body. Subai finally chose the latter because it was unrealistic to burn the room. The hotel management would soon find out and someone would come soon. Extinguishing. However, in fact, if you change your thinking, this matter can be easily solved. Subai took the towel from the hotel bathroom, dipped it in water, and then started wiping around it. Fortunately, when Subai sucked blood, it didn't splash everywhere like a child eating, so there weren't many places to wipe away. Just wipe away the more obvious blood. As for fingerprints, Subai didn't bother to do it. After that, he packed up all Brother Zeng's things. Brother Zeng had a black leather bag, which Subai happened to use to hold his things. The girl's mobile phone and wallet were placed in front of the girl by Subai. Immediately afterwards, Subai squatted in front of the girl and deliberately lowered his voice and said, "Pretend nothing happened, okay?" The girl immediately nodded her head. "He is dead," Subai said. The girl was stunned. Although the previous movements and her own feelings had informed her of the result, when she heard it clearly, the girl was instantly frightened and turned pale. "I won't kill you, but don't cause trouble for me. Just pretend that you didn't get the job today." "No, wait a moment. He has some cash in his bag." Subai took out some cash from Zeng Ji's wallet and threw it in front of the girl. The banknotes scattered and landed on the girl's body, creating an extremely ironic feeling. He patted the girl's face with his hand. "Well, it's quite tender." As a farewell, Subai helped the girl untie the rope from her hands. Then he stood up, put Brother Zeng's body on his shoulders, opened the door first, then closed the door heavily, and then, Subai quietly walked to the window again, turned back from the window, and returned to his room. About a quarter of an hour after Subai left, the girl, whose hands had been untied a long time ago, dared to tear off the black tape on her eyes bit by bit. Seeing that she was indeed the only one left in the room, the girl quickly untied herself. He took the rope off his legs and removed the things from his mouth. He stood up, stretched his sore thighs, and immediately put his mobile phone, wallet, and other things into his handbag. Then, he hesitated for a moment. Or he picked up all the money that Subai had scattered in the bathroom and put it into his bag. Finally, she opened the door, took out the key card, and ran out of the room quickly. The girl pretended that nothing was wrong and took the room card in the lobby to check out, then walked out of the hotel. After walking out of the hotel, she cried and walked to school with her head lowered. This was a nightmare. She wanted to pretend that it was nothing. Happened before. In the next room, Subai was lying on the bed, listening to the girl leaving outside. After half an hour, everything was calm. Subai took out a cigarette, lit it, and smiled at Brother Zeng's body placed under the bed. "Look, today's college students are not as fragile as the news reports say, are they?" Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Disyao. Chapter 28. Subai just lay on the bed, digesting the previous food. Although Brother Zeng's image was not flattering, and it was definitely not as cute as the little girl Subai saw during the day, but the blood of a living person was very important to Subai at this time. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than a gluttonous feast that made him intoxicated and unable to extricate himself. Subai began to wonder if he was born with this kind of destiny. He always unconsciously indulged in some weird quirks that ordinary people could not understand or even heard of. It seemed that he was born to be a different kind. Subai lay on the bed for a whole day. Next door, the cleaning staff had come to tidy up and tidy up. In the evening, new guests also checked in. That female college student performed well. Even if that brother Zeng disappears out of thin air, with his complicated social relationships, it would take a long time for him to attract the attention of the police or be reported to the police, or even disappear, because when Subai was packing his things, it has been discovered that the ID cards carried by Brother Zeng are not his own, which will make it very difficult for the police to investigate Brother Zeng in the future. Perhaps, Brother Zeng himself has a criminal record and is a fugitive. In fact, actually, sometimes it is not difficult to kill someone without taking responsibility, especially for a murder like Subai's without original purpose. The police cannot investigate from the deceased's relationship network and investigate the motive. Conducting an investigation without leaving any obvious evidence would be a huge problem for the police. Unless the police had a detective of Sherlock Holmes's level, according to their processes and procedures, it would be impossible to investigate Subai. It's almost impossible. The reason why Subai and the four young men dared to set up the murder club was actually because they did not have the same awe of the police and the system as ordinary people did. Moreover, because of their special status, they were able to see their some nature, therefore, lawless behavior also appears. Subai used his mobile phone to rent a car online, and then placed an order on a local Dobeo website to buy a larger suitcase. These were all paid online. The rented car was parked in the parking lot of the hotel and the person left. Because they used a special channel and paid an extra commission, the other party did not ask Subai to show any documents for processing. What procedures? As for the suitcase, it was also because Subai added an extra 50 RMB express fee and asked the store to deliver it directly offline. About 2 hours after placing the order, the doorbell rang, and Subai opened the door. The store took the suitcase over and didn't let anyone in. After all, there was a body lying in the room. The internet has indeed made many things very simple. After Subai sucked the blood from Brother Zeng's body, it shrank a lot, and it was not very troublesome to stuff it into the suitcase. In the end, Subai went to the bathroom to take a shower, lit a cigarette, and dragged his luggage. He walked down from the elevator to the first floor, flicked the room card to the front desk, and then pushed the suitcase containing the body out in full view of everyone, and put it in the back compartment of the car he rented. After sitting in the car, starting the car and turning on the air conditioner, Subai picked up the phone and dialed Gufan's number. "Hey, why are you calling me?" Gufan seemed a little impatient, and there was a crackling sound from around him. It was obvious that he was busy doing something. "What are you doing, making so much noise?" "After completing the application form, I am going to work at a medical research institute in London for a period of time." "You are really willing to do it for sooner? Aren't you afraid that your family will skin you?" Subai knew that Gufan's family had arranged for him to study in a key medical school, and he planned to study on this route in the future. Help him push it up. If Gufan puts down his hand at this time, you can imagine the reaction from the Gu family. Haha, Gufan obviously did not intend to continue talking on this topic. "I want some plasma, help me get it." Subai directly stated the purpose of his call. "Plasma? There's no water in your brain. Is it possible that you have evolved from murderous mania to hemophagy?" "Almost, I became a vampire." A vampire? "I believed your lies," Gufan scolded with a smile. "Come on, I don't care why you want the plasma. I'll give you the contact information of a person." That guy is a black and white guy who specializes in doing this. A group of smugglers can transfer blood from regular hospitals to blood banks, but the price is a bit expensive. Forget it, pretend I didn't say this. Although you are not taken seriously by the Su family, the money your parents left for you is indeed duo. You don't care about those few words. Okay, I'll send you that guy's cell phone number right away, and you can just say that I introduced him. Well, okay, thanks. Don't be polite. By the way, Sunir and I will go to London. Without Sunir and me, the club probably won't be able to survive. Make your own plans and try to find those scum when you want to kill someone. If you let me know you have become a guy who kills innocent people indiscriminately, so I will go to the police station to be a tainted witness and report you. Sure enough, doctors have a parental heart, Subai joked. Okay, if it doesn't work out, you can come here for treatment after I settle down in London. The research and treatment of mental illness here are really good, and they pay great attention to protecting the privacy of patients. I will. Well, goodbye. I hope that the next time I see you, it will be at my and Sunir's wedding. Come on. After hanging up the phone, not long after, a text message came from Gufan's number. Subai dialed the phone and went over. Hello, a hoarse male voice came. I was introduced by Gufan. I need plasma. What blood type? Casual. How much do you want? You can get as much as you can, money is not an issue. When do you want it? The sooner the better. Okay, can you do it tomorrow afternoon? Subai looked at the time and hesitated for a moment. If he got the plasma tomorrow afternoon, he would think of a solution then. He should be able to take it to Chengdu by plane. There would not be a big problem in terms of time. Ken. I'll let you know the location when the time comes, and the money. Money is not a problem. Well, let's wait for the news. After hanging up the phone, Subai started the car. He knew that there was a body in the back compartment and he had to get rid of it. As they drove on the road, Subai had already decided where to dispose of the body. However, what surprised Subai was that not long after he started driving, he saw a traffic policeman stopping the road to check for drunk driving. Subai didn't drink, but his eyes narrowed slightly. It was not only the traffic police who checked for drunk driving, but also the criminal police. The criminal police would check the driver's car when the traffic police checked for drunk driving. Subai took out his mobile phone and called Chu Zhao. Hey, what's going on? We're blocking the road here for inspection. What's going on? Subai asked. Oh, it was arranged by a director. Well, it's just a superficial effort, just to torment people. Subai nodded. At this time, a traffic policeman came over. Subai lowered the car window and blew into the measuring instrument. At this time, Subai noticed a female detective walking around her car. At this time, she had already walked behind her car. The female detective reached out and patted Subai's rear compartment and looked at the tires. At this time, another male detective ran over. Sister Lu, what's wrong? What's in the carriage? Want to check? Sister Lu nodded. The male detective ran towards the front window. Subai found that his hearing seemed to have changed significantly after exchanging the blood to change his body. He could actually hear the soft conversations behind the car clearly. When the male detective came over, Subai looked out the window with a smile, shifted the gear to reverse, and then gently placed his foot on the accelerator. Subai knew exactly what was in his trunk. If the other party opened it and looked around, there were so many policemen. Even if he had a special physique, there was no way he could do it in front of so many people and so many guns. If it were Gongzihai, it would be possible. His fireflies are indeed very useful. Hello, comrade, for a routine inspection, can you open your trunk? Subai nodded and quickly replied. Okay, no problem. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 29. Squeak. There was a harsh friction sound. The Audi car that was originally behind Subai suddenly accelerated and passed directly from the side of Subai's car. After knocking over several traffic policemen and breaking through the simple roadblock, it turned around at one end of the intersection and drove away in the opposite direction. This scene shocked everyone at the scene, but after all, they were people with professional qualities. Everyone immediately reacted and started preparing to intercept. However, the roadblocks were not set up very rigorously. After all, in name or in fact, they were really it was just a drunk driving investigation, not a wanted fugitive. Subai suddenly felt that God would help me. This was okay. It seemed that these traffic policemen and criminal policemen had no time to deal with him anymore. However, something happened that made Subai dumbfounded. The female detective named Sister Lu actually opened the car door and sat in Subai's passenger seat. She pointed at Subai and shouted, "Turn left, go through the intersection, and stop it." On the left side of Subai's car, there was a U-turn gap, with floor beads in front and behind, and Subai's car was located right here. The Audi car opposite was already preparing to speed up, and the other police cars had no time to stop from starting to intercepting. It was too late, and judging from the attitude and ruthlessness shown by the opponent before, he was definitely not the kind of person who could force him to stop by shouting and grabbing. Subai took a deep breath. "Okay, let's do it." Without saying a word, she turned the steering wheel to the left, then put the gear into gear and stepped on the accelerator. Everything happened in one go. In fact, Sister Lu didn't know that if the car behind her hadn't suddenly gone crazy, the owner of the car she was sitting in was also the owner of the car. He planned to follow suit, but the Audi car behind him got a head start, otherwise Subai would be the one doing such a thing now. The wheels quickly rubbed and twisted on the road, and the car body turned directly, and then crossed into the opposite lane. However, the Audi car's speed did not slow down at all, and it rushed over blankly. "Did you really catch a shark while fishing? Did you meet a real fugitive?" Subai was really a little surprised. His car was parked on the side of the road. He saw that Sister Lu wanted to stop the other's car completely with his own car. But Subai can't play like this. If it were normal, he would probably have stopped him. Even if the car was knocked over, the side that was hit was the passenger seat anyway. At most, he would be injured. After all, his ability to withstand injuries now is better than before. Much stronger. However, if there is a body in the rear compartment of oneself, if two cars collide and one is the one who passively bears the impact, and the car is knocked over or cracked, knocking out the body in the rear compartment, then I had fun, and even if I didn't crash out at first, I stopped the other party's car and the other party was subdued by the police, but the police will definitely clean up the place, and my car may even be temporarily taken away as undocumented. Maybe they would at least do a comprehensive inspection and take photos, then there would be no way to hide it. All thoughts flashed through Subai's mind for a moment, and then he slammed on the brakes, leaving a gap between the front of his car and the road ahead. The other party seemed to understand it, and he immediately turned and passed directly in front of Subai's car. Seeing the suspect's car pass by in front of her eyes, Sister Lu was so angry that she slapped the car window with her palm, and then yelled at Subai. "You bastard, what are you giving into? I'm afraid something will happen to you," Subai explained. "Even if something happens to me, I can't let that car run away. It just knocked over several of our colleagues, you." It could be seen that the female detective was not just talking. She had really put her own personal safety at risk. At this time, Subai suddenly thought of Chu Zhao. If Chu Zhao was half as good as this female detective, just have noble sentiments. Of course, Subai also knew that it was absolutely impossible. "Chase, chase for me!" Sister Lu shouted again. Subai nodded, immediately turned the steering wheel to turn around the car, and then drove directly over. That car was running in the opposite direction, and so was Subai's car. They were all going in the wrong direction. There wasn't a lot of traffic at this time, so it gave the car room to continue driving in the wrong direction, but it didn't go very fast either. Subai didn't stay behind for long before he caught up again. On the other side of the road, a police car was already catching up. Sister Lu held a walkie-talkie in her hand and kept giving instructions and directions, intending to stop the car at the corner ahead. Just when Sister Lu finished her instructions, Subai said directly, "It's too late, they're going to jump off the track." Sure enough, the Audi car in front actually drove down the driveway, down the steep slope, and rushed down. Not far in front of this road, there was a country road, which the other party was obviously very familiar with. Terrain, so I dare to drive like this. Drive on, follow. Sister Lu shouted to Subai. Subai frowned slightly. He was worried that if he continued to drive like this, the trunk door would be bumped open, and the suitcase containing the body would jump out. The trunk of the Audi car in front had also been opened due to the violent bumps. Subai simply stepped on the brakes. The tires and the ground rubbed violently, making an extremely harsh sound. Sister Lu was caught off guard and hit her forehead on the car. I rented this car." Subai spread his hands towards Sister Lu. Sister Lu was so angry that her chest heaved. Finally, she pushed the door open and got out of the car. A police car behind her quickly stopped. Sister Lu immediately got in. Then the police car rushed down the ramp and bumped along the road. The chase continued. Subai lit a cigarette, and then several police cars chased him. One police car was more unlucky. It bumped off the direction and rushed directly under a ditch. The whole car got stuck. Subai couldn't help but laugh. Looking left and right, the surrounding police officers were busy chasing cars, and the injured were still being treated over there. No one seemed to notice Subai, so Subai started the car again and turned away from the road. After driving on, Subai planned to take a detour to reach his destination. As a result, it took half an hour longer. Fortunately, Subai arrived at the abandoned factory before sunset. This place is often used as a gaming base by a group of real CS enthusiasts. Subai also played with Chuzeale before, so he remembers this place. Of course, the most important thing is that Subai remembers that there is gasoline here. Gasoline is actually used to make fires to create a practical atmosphere. It is usually hidden here. Most of the people who can afford these things are enthusiasts or some young men. One piece of equipment costs thousands or even thousands. So they don't care about the money. Parking the car in a hidden place in the factory, Subai got out of the car, opened the trunk, carried the suitcase and walked to a pit behind the factory. The suitcase was pushed down, and then Subai pushed it down. He took out the gasoline hidden in the tin bucket, uncorked the bottle, and poured the gasoline down. Then, Subai picked up a thin wooden strip on the ground, lit it with a lighter, and then threw it away. The sparks immediately burst into flames. Subai squatted beside the pit, stroking the beard on his chin with one hand. It's really tiring to have to go through this process every time you suck blood. I'll just have to buy it in the future. Although it is becoming more and more difficult to purchase plasma through normal channels, and the restrictions on it are becoming more and more strict, money can make a difference. Seeing that the fire was almost done, Subai clapped his hands, stood up, and prepared to leave. However, at this moment, the sound of a car suddenly came from the distance, and an Audi car with scratches on its body actually drove in from the gate of the abandoned factory. Subai suddenly felt dumbfounded. It seems that I and this Audi car are a little too fateful. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Disyao. Chapter 30. Obviously, the car finally escaped the police's tracking. In today's era, in an area covered with surveillance, it is understandably difficult to escape the police's tracking, and the other party really drove the car away with him. The person who came out did not abandon the car and run away, which is even more shocking. The car stopped in front of a factory door, and two people stepped out. A man with yellow hair wearing a peaked cap, holding a cigarette in his hand, showed a temperament similar to that of Afe, but under these frivolous appearances, there was a fierceness hidden. This guy got down from the driving position. It can be seen that he was the one who knocked over several traffic policemen with his car. Such a character and determination are indeed not something ordinary people can possess. The other man was much older. He looked to be 50 years old. He was wearing a tank suit, which was a bit retro. His hair was half gray, but he was very energetic. There was a faint sense of pressure when he walked. Subai hid by the wall on one side of the factory building. In front of him was the obstacle piled up by car tires, which actually hit him at this moment. Immediately afterwards, the old man and the peaked cap opened the trunk together, and then worked together to lift out a bronze box from inside. Seeing this scene, Subai somewhat understood why the other party decided to rush over and escape at that time, because they also saw the criminal police in front of them carefully inspecting the vehicle and opening the trunk. They should be cultural relic dealers. That's why I took the risk. It's quite ridiculous to say that if they knew that the car in front of them, that is, Subai's car, actually had a body, they would probably regret that they acted first, because if they didn't move, they would have to break into. Yes, it might be Subai. Of course, who could have expected this? At a stop for checking drunk driving, there were smuggled cultural relics in the car behind, and a corpse in the car in front. It was indeed a bit too coincidental. Subai stood there, watching the two men move the bronze box into the factory. After a slight hesitation, Subai didn't plan to do anything. He planned to get back to his car and drive away directly. He didn't want to wade into this muddy water. He still had a lot of things to do. There was really no need to stir up trouble at this time. However, things did not continue to develop as Subai imagined. After moving the things into the factory, the old man walked out quickly and walked straight towards Subai. The old man's nose kept twitching. Subai's eyes narrowed slightly. This old man's nose was really good. He must have smelled the corpse he had just burned and followed the smell here. Taking a deep breath, Subai began to retreat, but at the same time, he silently picked up a steel pipe on the ground and held it in his hand. The old man's steps were steady and he was obviously a member of the Lian family, but Subai didn't dare to be careless. When the old man turned sideways, Subai stepped forward and swung a steel pipe down. In order to protect the smuggled cultural relics, these two guys dared to drive directly into the traffic police and escape. If they found out that they were here, they would inevitably fight, so it was better to strike first. Unknowingly, Subai's sense of awe for human life was infinitely close to zero. Perhaps it was the experience in the world of horror radio stories that made Subai's murderous obsession long ago. Once it spread, he didn't need to endure it, and he didn't have to endure it. He could just find a suitable excuse and take action. As soon as the stick came down, the old man actually raised his palm and slapped it sideways. Buzz. Subai only felt a sharp pain in his tiger's mouth. Then, the steel pipe in his hand was shot out. The old man's lower body tilted down quickly, and then his whole body rushed towards Subai like an arrow from a string. Just like tiger down the mountain. Subai knew that he had kicked the iron plate solidly. At this time, Subai missed Chu Zhao's gun very much. When he went to Sichuan later, he would definitely find a way to get some guns with him. The critical moment was still that stuff works better. In fact, after melting the blood of the ruined vampire, Subai's reflexes and strength improved a lot, but the old man's kung fu was truly amazing. He was not the kind of person who shows off and opens a martial arts gym, but in the true sense. That kind of martial artist. The old man hit Subai directly with his fists like a mountain collapsing. Although Subai crossed his arms to intercept him, his whole body was also knocked away by the terrible force and landed 4 or 5 meters behind. There was a burning pain in my arm for a moment. The old man was unyielding when he gained power, or in other words, he originally had the intention of killing people. He did not allow any surprises in this matter and this thing. When the old man rushed over again, Subai swept over with one leg. However, the old man's knees squatted down slightly, and then he swept his foot low and directly kicked Subai's calf. Subai, who was lying on the ground, looked like a top. He spun around twice on the ground and finally hit the wall. Although he had taken it seriously, the old man's power was still much stronger than Subai expected. If it weren't for the aura of the other party being too pure, and if it weren't for the fact that the other party's age and temperament matched those of a mature family, Subai would I almost thought this guy was also a listener of horror radio. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots were heard, and Subai was shot twice in the lower abdomen. He lay on the ground, struggled twice, and finally became motionless. The old man frowned slightly, stood next to Subai and felt it. After confirming that there was no breath, he turned his head and looked at the peaked cap behind him. Using a gun is really a boring thing. It's better than your dawdling. I'll go over there and take a look, and you can drag his body into the workshop. The old man nodded, reached out and grabbed Subai's ankle, and dragged Subai into the workshop, where the bronze box was placed. After a while, the peaked cap also came back. There's a car, haha, it looks familiar. It's the car that chased us for a while but didn't chase us in the end. Are they still acquaintances? The old man smiled. We'll deal with his body later. We don't have much time now. Let's get rid of this thing first and then we'll contact the boss again. The peaked cap pointed at the box and said. Okay. Snapped. There was a crisp sound, and the peaked hat was like a kite with broken strings. It was blown away and hit the wall. The whole person's chest had completely collapsed, but he was not dead yet. He just shouted angrily with a mouth covered with thick blood foam. Old guy, you dare to take advantage of others. This is something the boss specifically wants, but you actually dare to hack it. Boss, haha. The boss shook his head. Originally, I was still hesitating, but when he comes, there will be an extra corpse here, so I don't have to hesitate. You want to disguise him as you? The peaked hat was not stupid, and he immediately understood the old man's plan. Well, okay, you can shut up. The old man also happened to walk up to the peaked cap at this time, stretched out his hand, grabbed the peaked cap's neck, and then twisted it. A crunching sound came, the peaked cap's neck was twisted, and the head hung in an unnatural posture. On one side. Immediately afterwards, the old man took out a handkerchief from his clothes pocket, wiped his hands, walked to the bronze box, put the handkerchief away, lost his temper in his dantian, strode forward, then grabbed the bronze box with both hands, and started pushed. The inside of the bronze box should have something similar to a magnet, so it doesn't have a lock. You have to use a lot of force to open it. Green smoke began to appear on the top of the old man's head, and he began to sweat. Obviously, for him, a master of engine, pushing this bronze box was also a very difficult task. A quarter of an hour later, the box finally made a click sound and was pushed open completely. It was originally a liquid, an opaque liquid. After the lid of the box was pushed open, the liquid inside began to sink slowly. In the end, one side the mirror was revealed. The old man just stared at the mirror for half an hour. Just then, there was a person over there who couldn't help it anymore. Subai covered his stomach with one hand and supported the ground with the other. He got up with difficulty and murmured. The damn bitch also said that it was wrong for me to exchange for this physique. Without this physique, I probably wouldn't be able to survive the start of the next story world. After standing up, Subai closed his eyes and groped forward, reaching the side of the bronze box. He stretched out a hand and pushed the old man. The old man fell directly to the ground, maintaining the same posture as before. At this moment, a woman's shrill scream came from Subai's body, and then a line of white smoke shot out and entered the box, that is, the mirror. Cold sweat began to flow out of Subai's face. What is in this box? A living person would have his soul removed immediately after looking at it. The soul is immediately forcibly swallowed when it gets close. Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Disyao. Chapter 31. The female ghost is not a very powerful ghost to begin with. She is far inferior to the level of the fierce ghost, and her abilities are not very strong. Subai was not surprised that she was sucked into the bronze box. Of course, he would not regret it. I felt bad, although the female ghost's predecessor was my senior, she was not a relative or acquaintance, and they had not had any interactions with each other, and Subai was not that affectionate. What surprised Subai was the old man. This old man's kung fu had reached a level that was difficult for ordinary people to understand. Subai even felt that the old man could dodge bullets with his own reflexes. This was not based on horror broadcast story points. The ability that was redeemed was based on the old man's real skills gained through decades of hard work. This kind of person is highly harmonious in spirit, and has extremely strong willpower. But, just because I took a close look at the thing in the bronze box, my soul was sucked in and died. Subai stretched out his hand and touched the edge of the lid of the bronze box, and then applied a little force. There should be a mechanism inside. It would be more time-consuming and laborious to push it open, but as long as you put a little force when closing it, it would automatically start to close. Inside the bronze box the liquid also began to emerge again and covered the mirror again. After confirming that the box was closed, Subai opened his eyes, and then quickly squatted down. The bullet had been slowly squeezed out with his muscles when he was pretending to be dead, but it seemed that it took a lot of energy to recover from the physical injury. So that feeling of hunger in my body came back again. Hungry, hungry, hungry. So hungry. Subai took a deep breath. This physique is indeed very effective to a certain extent, but being so hungry that you can't stand it every time you recover from an injury is not something you enjoy. It is actually a great torture. It is like a disposable rechargeable battery, and its battery life is very poor. It must be recharged immediately after being used once, otherwise it will be useless. Subai didn't like this feeling very much, because he was like a disposable item now. But, fortunately, although there are no plasma bags now. But here, there are two corpses that have just died. The corpses should still have residual warmth. Subai crawled towards the old man's body, lowered his head, exposed his fangs, then pierced the old man's neck and started sucking crazily. Subai knew in his heart that the scene must be terrifying, and he seemed to have changed from a homicidal mania patient to a necrophagia patient, but he could not resist the temptation of blood, there was no way at all. This is original sin. After a full meal, Subai sat on the ground leaning against the corpse. His wet hair was still dripping with sweat. Subai looked very decadent. After resting for a while and calming down the disgust of overeating in his heart, Subai stood up and looked at the two corpses. He went out to get gasoline again and poured it on the two corpses. Then, he poured gasoline on the other person's car again. Ignite, burn. Subai didn't like the temperature of the flame, but sometimes the flame was indeed a good thing, a very convenient thing. As it burned, many sinful things would disappear. After trying it, he wanted to pick up the bronze box, but found that it was indeed a bit heavy. After picking it up, it was a bit difficult to walk. Subai simply put the box on the ground first, then ran out and took his car. He drove in, reversed into the factory, then used all his strength to lift the box and put it into the trunk. Boom! Subai closed the trunk heavily, holding the trunk lid with one hand and panting a little. Subai himself didn't know why he wanted to take this thing away. This thing was obviously very dangerous, but after experiencing the horror radio story world, Subai's worldview had changed a lot. For people like them, the more dangerous it is. Something also means the more valuable it is. Take it back first and study it yourself. Got in the car and started the car. The rented car was decorated with a little monk placed in front of it. The little monk had his hands clasped together to form a roly-poly. Subai looked at the decoration, clasped his hands together, and said silently, "Go back safely, don't let me encounter a drunk driving investigation again." After saying that, Subai smiled himself. Fortunately, the journey back was smooth sailing. Subai drove the car to the entrance of a supermarket, where he bought some daily necessities, clothes and shoes, and then got back to the car. He drove the car to the car rental agency and renewed the fee. Then, he drove the car to a fork under the highway and parked the car here. There were green belts on both sides and there were not many cars. Subai didn't plan to rent a hotel or find a place to stay. Anyway, he had already bought the air tickets. For tomorrow night's air tickets, he would have to trade plasma tomorrow afternoon. He plans to go back to CD and does not plan to stay in the city. Anyway, since his second uncle has told him about the school affairs, everything will be fine. He will go to CD to rest for a while in the house left by his parents. Time. It should be to heal, or to escape. In fact, the more practical purpose is to find a familiar and quiet place to deal with the terrorist broadcast. At this time, Subai's cell phone rang. "Hello. Subai, I just came back from the competition and found out about you. Are you okay now?" "Fine. Where are you?" "I came to see you." "No need." "No need," the female voice on the other side of the phone seemed a little angry. "Well, my current location is relatively remote. Give me your location and I'll take a taxi and buy some food." The female voice sounded very determined. Subai frowned and hesitated for a moment, but still nodded. "All right." After hanging up the phone, Subai gave his location to the other party, and then sent the license plate number of his car. Then he got into the car, put down the seat, and lay down on the seat. "Go up and squint your eyes." "I slept for almost 2 hours." 2 hours later, the car window was lightly knocked outside. Subai opened his eyes and saw a very delicate face. Opening the car door, Subai walked out. "You're in a bad mood, so you're driving here to relax?" the girl asked. Subai nodded. "Are you hungry?" The girl was holding 2 large plastic bags in her hands, and the 2 of them were sitting on the ground by the roadside. The girl rolled a roast duck for Subai and handed it to Subai. Subai took it and took a bite. The roast duck was a bit cold. "When you are with me, don't you feel like you are in love at all?" the girl asked. "It's okay." Subai really didn't want to think about that at this time. "By the way, Susu, I'm going to CD tomorrow night and I'm going to rest there for a while." Hearing Subai's response, Susu seemed a little disappointed, but still nodded. "You really need to rest, wait until the holiday." Susu gritted her teeth, as if she was struggling with something, because it was a bit uncomfortable for a girl to say these words, "I will accompany you." Subai reached out and touched the girl's hair. The two met by accident. At that time, she was the host of a program, but because of the failure of a program, she hid in a lecture theater and wiped her tears alone. Subai happened to be doing a course design in that classroom and saw her. Handed her a pack of wet wipes, and then she leaned on his shoulder. The two of them didn't seem to have officially started dating, and they didn't seem to be lovers, but Susu seemed to have been trying hard to regard Subai as her boyfriend. However, Subai's response was always a little cold, neither admitting nor denying it. Scum. I'm a little cold, Susu said. Subai sighed and held Susu in his arms. Susu's hair has a light fragrance, which is very charming. A man and a woman, just sitting here. Until, the sky gradually darkened. Okay, I'll take you back. It was getting late, so Subai patted Susu's shoulder. Subai, I like you so much. After Susu said this, she mustered up the courage to put her red lips on Subai's cheek. Subai turned his head and looked at the girl's face. The girl looked particularly charming under the hazy sight. Good. Subai stretched out his hand and scratched the tip of Susu's nose. Then, he took out his mobile phone, opened WeChat, and clicked on Chu Zhao's WeChat chat box. Who is this? Susu felt that Subai finally responded to her, and she seemed very happy, and then she hugged Subai's waist tighter, appearing even closer than before. This is a bad friend of mine, named Chu Zhao, from the criminal police team. Well, I asked him to check some things. What? Susu asked curiously. Room opening record, Subai said directly. Susu was stunned for a moment, a little confused. Subai smiled and said, your room opening record. Subai handed the phone to Susu, then took out a cigarette and lit it. Looking at these records, Susu's whole body felt like she was getting an electric shock. Under the night, only Subai's cigarette butt flickered.